Switching in 3, 2, 1. Goodness gracious. We're all here. We're all here. Let me just change that. It didn't quite catch up with me there. I think there's a little delay. That should be catching up with us.
That's expired.
2. There we go. Cool. Sorry, I forgot there's a delay, so it really confused me.
Gracious.
Hi, everybody. Oh, somebody's got my sound coming through. Hi, everybody. I'm your host, Nate at Night, and today we have a bit of a special occasion on a couple of different ways. So we're going to be doing a live Q&A with my dad and Gaz. Now, what you got to understand about this is that this isn't just like random people who have created a product and everything. This is my father and my father's best friend who have come together on a project and put together this graphic novel comic type thing, and it's actually really good. It's really, really good, and we wanted to have the opportunity to also host a live Q&A, kind of going over a bit of it and talking certain points and just having a good little time, and also telling you where you can buy the comic in the future, merchandise, and just have a good little time, right? So, I'm your host, Nate, as I mentioned. Below me is my father, Mark. I was pausing to give you a moment to say hi. and the artist for the comic, Gaz.
Hi, guys.
Oh, man, amazing. It's you know what? It looks really good. I'm really pleased with how this has turned out visually on the stream. We've got 2 different modes, but this is going to be the one we're probably going to use for the most part because it shows all of us. It's really nice. It's really pleasant. I'm pleased. I spent a couple hours working on this yesterday. Not gonna lie. Ah, thanks, Dad. Thank you for becoming a paid member and joining Cool Peeps. That's so very kind of you. Right, we'll go through chat really quickly, and then we're gonna go through my question list for the live Q&A. If you have any questions as we go, please be sure to put them in the chat, because later on, at the end of my segment, we will go through live questions on air, and these 2 will answer, unless obviously something is a little too inappropriate, in which case we'll probably not touch that. But for the most part, things are open. Let's see. So we got my dad. We got Sparkling Trash. Hi, hello, good to see you. Smiley Face. Hello, Cheese. Thank you. It's good food. Good food, depending on the type of cheese. We obviously have Gary himself, Gaz. He says hi. Chaos. Good to see you as always. Myself and Dad. Let me check the vertical stream version, where we just have Gaz. Excellent. 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 Okay. So, boys, Lure of the Krakmoth. This is crazy. I can't believe it. I mean, I remember the early days when you were, especially my dad was talking about kind of really wanting to write a story and everything, and you both molded it into something that it's really good. It's really, really good. So we're gonna start hitting you with some questions. So let's start with the first one. Lure of the Krakmoth. It feels very ominous and mysterious. Can you give us a short description of what the story is about?
Yeah, do you want me to take this, guys? Or do you want to do it?
No, I'm going to leave this to the writer.
Oh, very thoughtful. So, essentially, it's just a story of a I think the blurb on the back cover will explain it really well as well. But it's, I think it does a very good take. It's a story of a man who is, I guess he's been a bit overdoing it at work a little bit, having a bit of on the verge of a bit of a breakdown, and he hasn't worked with his doctor, and his doctor says, you need to take a break, go on take a bit of a holiday, a few days out, go to the coast or something like that. And for whatever reason, which I won't spoil because you need to read the story to enjoy that part, he winds up heading down to the very south coast of the country where he is, which is very similar to England, but the name of the place on the south coast is a not real name. It's the name Corna, but it sounds a little bit like Colonel, which is the original name for Cornwall. So he goes for a holiday there. He heads out there and just gets into a bit of an adventure, and it goes in a strange way, not how he expected. It's kind of meant to be having all kinds of different adventures, just small adventures, but things which kind of keep you on edge. And keep him on edge.
Just to interject just slightly, so the thing for people that don't really know about, so we call it Kerner in the story, but it's basically essentially set in an alternative Cornwall. Now, Cornwall is a Celtic minority. It's a recognised Celtic minority country within Great Britain, and with that, it's steeped, historically steeped in myth and legend anyway. The King Arthur legend is tied in with Cornwall, amongst many others, and many sort of seafaring mysteries and legends. So that's sort of the route that we went down, or certainly Mark did as the writer. So without giving anything too much away, we've kind of it is loosely based on already mythology and legend of Cornwall, mixed in with a bit of very cleverly by Mark, a bit of HP Lovecraft styley, but yeah. So the original question being about the mystery, the story having mystery to it, and that fantasy type element. Yes, it is, but I think it is fair to say that it is connected to real mythology and real folklore of Cornwall. So anyone who's interested in that and wants to look into that any further, you'll find a whole catalogue of stories connected to Cornwall and that's sort of Celtic kind of based folklore. But yeah, that's kind of where that's how I saw it.
Yeah,
that's from my perspective.
Yeah, no, and that's right. And it has, as you said, there are influences coming from different directions. But I think we'll cover that, and you've got more questions coming up, which I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, I've probably, as usual, waffled on and preempted probably the next
That's
5
right.
questions. I do apologise.
That's not a problem. This is your time, and I'm happy for you guys to share this space. We will jump on to question number 2. So, the Krakmoth. It's a great name. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, it's an interesting background, and I'm going to give you where it came from, and then I'm going to give you the when I was discussing it with Gaz, it went in there even further, in a different direction to what I expected, and we'll talk about it because I think that's quite interesting. So it's really kind of a silly the name at first. As I've said, the story is meant to be influenced by, meant to borrow from and reference different writers of the kind of the horror genre, starting with, as Gaz mentioned, Lovecraft. But there was another writer, a famous writer for the horror genre, M.R. James, a writer of ghost stories in the Victorian era. And I always remember I was misremembering, but I remember there was a story that it was a ghost story, kind of a horror ghost story and it was called. I thought it was. I thought the creature or the monster was called the Traktoth in that means, but I misremembered it. It wasn't called the Traktoth. By the way, I'm not the only person I discovered that misremembered it, because if you Google Traktoth, you'll find actually that the creepypasta folk or some people from that community have also thought there was a creature called Traktoth. There was no such creature even in that story. The story is actually called the Tractate Midoff. So, and I just got the name jumbled up, and I wanted the name to be kind of a Lovecraftian sounding, so it's somewhat based on Cthulhu, for example. But I didn't want to call it Cthulhu. I want to have my own name. I was like, because I thought Traktoth was a thing, I thought, yeah, something like that. And that came up with Krakmoth. Then it went up a different direction when I was talking to Gaz about it, because he saw something in it which I didn't originally put in there, but it was really interesting. And so Gaz took a look at that, and he said, that's a combination of 2 other. And Gaz, I'll let you pick up the story from there.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, so from my point of view, so as soon as Mark said, that was kind of the words he was looking at, and Krakmoth. Well, instantly to me, it was kind of a no-brainer. I said, well, if you think about it, and you look at some of the artwork that I've kind of come up with already, you've got the Kraken, which I'm sure most of people will be aware of, and I don't just mean the rum Kraken. I don't know if you get that over there. But we certainly do every year. Kraken, I don't touch it, by the way. The Kraken. So, and then we have the beer moth, which is another mythological creature that pops up in various different nations' mythology. So to me, it was straightforward. Krakmoth, Kraken beer moth. It was
Combined.
a perfect kind of fit, really. And the other aspect of that being obviously the Kraken being a sea creature, however, the beer moth being a land creature. So because we wanted to tie in, without giving too much away, tie in, the creature being able to come out of the water, it just made perfect sense to
And that
call
the
it
thing is,
Krakmoth.
as he was explaining to me exactly like that, and I was like, well, no, that's, he said, it must be, it's a combination of that, isn't it? I said, no, it wasn't, that wasn't the intention, but I do like that.
Yeah, so we'll have that.
Again, this guy says, it does reflect the kind of the attributes of the creature.
Wow.
Sorry, when I was just waving a bit and gesticulating over that way, it's because there's lots of people walking past. I'm in my gallery at the minute, and lots of people have just walked past, and they're all saying they're on it. And what is it on now? So people knocking on the window. So we should have some more viewers, I think.
We do actually. We've got 2 new texts in the chat, not in the regular stream chat, but in the vertical version, the mobile friendly.
Right. Okay.
So we've got.
Well, they were walking past, so yeah. So
Yeah.
they've been on the mobile. Yeah.
Absolutely. So so Michaela says Darcy says it sounds amazing. So that's nice.
Oh, bless her.
And
Well,
then,
that is my granddaughter, by the way.
Yeah, she's got good taste.
dang right. And then Pike and Predator Angling 6908 says, could the story be made into a stage production? That's quite an interesting question.
That sounds like someone I know. Hi, Davey. I think.
Is he pitching for it?
Maybe. You never know, right?
Well, who knows?
Who knows?
Do you know when you sort of embark on these sort of things, and you initially do it out of it is personal, so you're doing it out of a bit of personal love. You don't look at anything bigger. You don't look at merchandise. You don't look at I didn't look at selling the artwork or anything of that nature. It was just something really personal that myself and Mark wanted to put down, just for prosperity, really. And maybe in future years our kids would pick it up one day, go, oh yeah, this is what your granddad wrote, and this is what your granddad drew. Now, because it's grown arms and tentacles, we kind of are thinking sort of beyond, and we have, created merchandise, T-shirts and such like. I'm not plugging. I'm just trying to explain, how it has moved on, and now we're publishing the book, and we're thinking now of more copies because we've had so much feedback, and people are, have been brilliant and so interested in it. So you say a stage show. I think my dream would be, animation. I was always thinking potentially it would go down the animation route first, and what you really want is someone to come up, and the big guys and say, wow, that's a really cool story. Would you mind if we made a series or a movie, or so at this stage I don't think anything's off the table, because it's already surprised me so much at how people have sort of taken it on board, and especially local to where we are. The locals. There's not one day when I don't walk down the road and someone stops me and asks me about the story, and it's been incredible, really. So yeah. In answer to that question, who knows? Who knows? Come and speak. Come and talk.
Yeah. Okie dokie. Let's jump into. Accidentally hit the button too early. Let's jump into question number 3. So I get the feeling that you've had this story in mind for quite some time. Care to share some of your process with us?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the process and just where the story came from, is that also something to talk about, or
whatever you'd like. It's you have the floor.
I can tell you where the story came from, and it came from just a really simple, silly idea, to be honest with you, which I never thought was going to come off the ground. It was inspired by a friend of mine, who's, I'm going to give him a shout out because I don't know if he's got this. He will be looking at this, even if he's not looking at it live. He will be looking at this feed at some point, and that's Andy. So Andy in Mevagissey, he works. He's a long time friend of mine. We've known each other for a long time. I know that he loves. Oops, just broken my camera. I know that he loves all kinds of different horror genres. When we used to have a DVD shop, which you'll remember, Cafe Movieland, Andy used to be a regular, and we used to discuss movies all the time, particular things like Guillermo del Toro or Lovecraft. I knew there was a massive Lovecraft fan in particular. So I was lately he's retired from what he was doing back then, and he's working in. I'm not going to, again, I don't want to say exactly what he does because it might spoil the story for people that are going to, because it's inspired by him who can read it. But his current job, I was bumped into one day a few months ago. I've just returned myself to this area in Cornwall, and I noticed he had a book to read. He said, "Oh, he was going to work, and he was going to his bones about his work." And he said, "I'm just going to work, and I've got a." So I see you got a Lovecraft book to keep you entertained. And he said, "Yeah, I'm going to read some short stories right out of here." And just out of the blue, I decided, you know what, I think would be really cool. He'd find really amusing. I'm going to write a short story. It's been a while since I've written short stories. I used to when I was a lot younger. But it's going to be in Lovecraft style because I know he likes that. But he'll be a feature. He with the work he's doing will be a feature of that story, and that's where it started from. Just a simple idea, just to entertain him really. And I thought within an hour, I thought, yeah, I'll never do that. I've had lots of ideas for short stories. That's never going to turn to anything. But I think I was having conversation with different people, most of all Gaz, I think, talking about this idea. And it just grew arms and legs. As Gaz says, it seemed to just go and go and go. The rough idea I had in my mind involved the monster, the creature. And what happened in particular, apart from the fact that Gaz has got a very unique artistic style, which felt like it would fit into this story anyway. It felt like that was the style of things I was going to talk about, the style of the monster. But also, there's a lot of, well, I mean, you kind of get one anyway even in the start of this, but there's lots of like, there's a lot of octopus in it. Images all around Evergisty, this particular village right now. It was something that was a little different to when because I lived before in Evergisty, and when I've come back on my return, I didn't see that before. This is quite a new thing. There seemed to be like everywhere there were.
Yeah. So it kind. If you don't mind, Mark, so it kind of, and I think this is quite important. It kind of coincided with an event in Cornwall that happened. So the last time it happened was 67 years ago, exactly. And basically, the coastal waters around Cornwall were basically infiltrated by the North African red octopus. This is all true. This isn't this isn't part of the story. This is true. And what an octopus does, it eats everything. Shellfish. It eats everything. So all our fishermen, we have scallopers, we have lobster, crab pots, and this is the fishermen's bread and butter. So these octopus come along, start munching, and what they do, they eat everything within the shell, but just leave the shell. So your fishermen are pulling up the pots, and all they've got are these empty shells, look. And very quickly realise that something's going on. So a scan on the fish finders, they all went out and they all scanned the coastal bed and found millions and trillions even of these octopus had arrived. Now that was just a natural phenomenon. Which just happened to be right at that moment when the seed was set and planted for the story. So it helped in a really bizarre way. It kind of the story almost. I don't want to belittle what Mark did, but it was very organic with our surroundings. So it wasn't just people that influenced the story. It was just something that was happening within the village and within the county, kind of fed into the story in such a natural way.
It did, because what was happening was, as I said, I was going to just give it up, and I didn't expect myself to follow through with it. But talking to guys, I was inspired by his artwork and things like that. And then I just kept seeing imagery, whether it's in the village or connected to the story, or I kept hearing all these stories about the octopus and stuff like that. And even outside the village, things kept. We were saying all the time, it was really uncanny. We're saying, listen, the universe is saying you got to write this story.
You've got to write this. I mean, we even went to a festival up the north of the country. Bearded Fairy, shout out, brilliant. And there was a big tent there with a giant octopus on top of it.
On top, we just kept
we're
saying,
like, this big inflatable octopus.
Unbelievable.
We're like, right, the universe is definitely telling us things here.
It's got to be written. And so, in terms of process, Nathan. So what then happened, and I think you were aware of this as well, because we brought you into the process around this time. As I started writing, so I wrote it in bits. I've only got so much stamina for writing. So I would write little bits and snippets, and I would send those over to yourself and Gaz.
Which was a nightmare.
And the feedback. Sorry,
which was a nightmare for me, because I'm getting these tidbits of story, which I have to say was amazing, right? So when you're trying to draw, and be inspired, and you're trying to interpret the words, it's that good. You're turning it over, and then where's the rest? I need the rest. What happens next? And it was really frustrating not to have the whole story in one go. So that is that is quite important about to explain about the process. My drawings were just literally like chapters. There was only so much that Mark sent me, and then I had to kind of create around that. I never ever once did I have the whole story to kind of work from. I was working from just sections, which was really, trust me, really difficult. Not in a bad way, but just because I wanted to know what was going on. Do you know what I mean? It was like a cliffhanger every week, and it was like, what happened? I need to draw the next bit.
Right.
I think a couple of times I kind of interpreted it a little bit and did actually.
Absolutely. So the thing about that is that you would fill the gap. I mean, the story is intentionally, when you read it, it's intentionally ambiguous, largely ambiguous. It's leaving lots of gaps for people to kind of fill in. And Gaz is very good at filling gaps in. So he was very, and especially when I leave things open like that. So he was doing that, and that in turn, when I was looking at the artwork, that was inspiring me again. So it was just, and it kind of did grow in that organic way. It was drawing inspiration from each other as we go. But yeah, I did do it in segments, and I'm still writing. I still seem to write in segments. I seem to like doing that. But the good thing that comes out of that is you do get that cliffhanger style on a regular basis. So every couple of pages is a new, what's going to happen now?
Yeah.
And also we tried to get to. I wanted to. It's very visual. It's meant to be visual because again, I decided fairly early. Basically, that story wouldn't have existed without the conversation with the guys. So I decided very early on that this was going to be. It's going to be Gaz that was going to work on it with me from the art point of view, and that it was going to be like a bit like the old style comic books, like the Jack Kirby's and the Stan Lees of Marvel, which we both love, where they just feed each other. We just inspire each other, and we go and we develop it that way. That's very much, I think, how this has been written.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic, a well detailed and fantastic answer. I like that. I like that a lot. Let's see. I'm just going to hit chat real quick because we've had another message. Endercat says hello. Hi. Good to see you. Welcome to chat. Let's see. We've got Chaos says creating to create is an amazing place to be, even when it transforms from that. Well said. Well said.
Yeah, I agree. We agree. We totally agree.
All right. So on to question number 4, which I've even got a little reference picture. I'm going to pop up on the screen there. So Gaz, you run the art gallery Escape in Mevagissey, which I've noticed there's a gallery in the story also called Escape. Is this a fun tie into the story? In which case, are you represented as Q?
So Escape is definitely in the story. Again, trying not to give anything away. I think Mark did do a sneaky one there and created a character in there. I like to call it, and I suppose I can call it this because it's not called this in the book, but I like to call him the Shark Tooth Doodler, and yeah, but I guess you're going to have to read that bit for me to give you to give you a total answer on that. But yes, to say the gallery is in there. There is a little section in there, and there's a little bit of a twist on a cameo. Let's say that's about as much as I'll say.
Yeah,
that's a good answer. All right. So another reminder for the chat: if you have any questions, please be sure to keep hitting us with them because at the end of the segment we will be covering more of them. I know that we have at least one loaded up, which is good. We'll jump into my next question, which I have another picture for. Let me go here. So let's talk about the story a little bit. Megan Tilly is based on Mevagissi. What led you to go with this setting?
Well, oh, wow. Now, I did prepare these questions, but I can't remember what my answer was in my head. So what led us to go with Mevagissi, you're saying, or with,
Yeah.
like Megan Tilly. Okay.
Yeah.
So initially, so it was always going to be based on a version of Mevagissi, a version of Cornwall, in a very dark dimension. So not actual Cornwall. It was always going to be based on it, but it was going to be in a very dark dimension, a dark version of it, if you want. And there are little clues given early in the story that it's a dark dimension, shall we say? But there was a little bit early on. I'm not going to say we never argued about this. There was a bit of discussion between myself and Gaz, and I wanted to make sure that he was comfortable, and he wanted to make sure I was comfortable throughout all these things. So he was saying, it'd be good if it's going to be based in Mevagissi. You're going to call it Mevagissi because I think that will go down very well with our our visitors and things like that. And at first I didn't want to call it Mevagissi. I'd given Cornwall a different name. I call it Corna. But then after a bit of time, I was working on plot devices, and I decided that actually Mevagissi was. I did want to call it Mevagissi, so I actually for a little bit there. I was going to call it Mevagissi, but then again, when you read the story, you'll probably pick up on the fact that there is another plot device. In order for it to work properly, I couldn't call it exactly Mevagissi.
No.
I had to call it Megan Tilly. So Megan Tilly, and there's a bit of a reference there to
It's
Mevagissi.
Yeah. It's integral to the story.
Combo. It's a bit of the name Megan Tilly is also a bit of a combination of a common mistake with people from outside Mevagissi. What they call it Megavissi. So Mega is a little bit comes from that, and Tilly it comes from the original Cornish name for Megavissi, which is poor Tilly. So there is actually nods to the various things in that, but also the main reason it's Megan Tilly is a plot device. And again, when you read it, you'll get that.
And it's probably fair to say, at the end of the day, look, this is a small. If you don't know Mevagissi, it's a very small traditional fishing village, and there are families that have lived here for going back way back. It's a very proud fishing village. It's a wonderful place to live. You feel honoured that you're accepted. It takes 400 years to be accepted, by the way. We are getting on a bit, us. So there's that element of being respectful, and we were very mindful of the fact that we didn't want to upset anybody. We didn't want to for people to think we were showing their village and their history, in any way, a poor, in a bad light, because after all, this isn't for everybody. Not everybody's they're going to be interested, but they're not necessarily going to be their genre. They're not, and so we were mindful of that. We were mindful of the respect aspects of things, and I think that's really, in the end, that's why we really did decide not to go with calling it Mevagissi, but to just do a play on words. But the play on words, and this is where the clever writing comes into it. And I mean, it is extremely clever, and I really do hope that people, when if you do purchase the story, the book, that you actually do a little bit of research, and you actually, it pricks your interest on Cornwall, and you look at these words, because the way Mark's written it is in a very clever way, and there are words there that are Cornish words, old Cornish words in there, and and finding out about that and why it's called that. You've got it opens up this whole other side of the story, and you will learn more about Cornwall, and so yeah. But initially, I think it was a respectful about showing a respect of where we live. After all, we live here.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and I want to continue living here.
No,
You know,
no,
I don't want to
no.
be invited out on a boat one night and never come back. You know,
Yeah,
That's-
and it's just that dark aspect to it. It's a dark story. I'm not going to say it's a super scary horror story, but it's a dark story, and it presents the scene in a bit of a dark way. We didn't again, as Gaz says, we didn't want that to be. We didn't want people to think that we were putting this village down. We love the village, so it's very we want to make it very clear that this is not the actual village; it's a version of the village with a lot of artistic license goes into that.
absolutely.
Good for the clarification. Very good. I mean, I quite enjoy the idea of like an alternate version, or like I said, I mean, it's fictional, but it's based on real things. And I know for me, like with some of my storytelling ideas for my project, I'm similar. I like to use real world things, even if it's not exactly the correct representation of it. That's excellent. That's excellent. So next question we have, and it's kind of a joint question, and it's just a little bit of goofy fun, which I yet again have another reference picture here, which you guys may or may not see, which is the pyramid that you have in the story. So, the pyramid is also inspired by an actual one in Cornwall. Do you guys want to tell us a little bit about that, or any other pyramids you know of?
I'll let guys pick that. I'll let Gaz pick that up. I'll do a bit in a minute.
Well, so again, going back to how I used to receive my little like tidbits of the story. So it was usually when Mark was driving up. You know, he's already gone up north, up to Leeds, and he'd be sat in his hotel room, and he would write this, write a section, and he would ping it over to me. And this particular piece, straight away, as I'm reading it, it's in my head. I'm visualizing this just absolutely 100%. I know exactly what I'm going to draw for this one section, and without giving anything away. So there's a travelling section within the story very early on, and the route that it takes is very descriptive, the way Mark's written it. So I knew exactly what the terrain and the landscape looked like. So we do have a pyramid in Cornwall, just outside the village, actually, not too far. And what they actually are slag heaps from, we have a clay mining industry in Cornwall, China clay.
There is another plot device.
In order for it to probably drunk out of a cup made of clay that's come from Cornwall, if you like your tea in China. And basically all these slag heaps, all the deposits were built up out in the clay, they call it the clay country, which is a section out, where the quarries are. And they made them, and they naturally sloped, and they actually they used to be white, but they've over the years turned sort of darker. They're all a bit sort of, they've got sort of, grooves in them, and they all look really cool. But in the winter they get this white cap, this like sort of snow or ice, and they literally call them the Cornish Alps or the Cornish pyramids in the summer. Okay, so that's basically what they are. They're a real thing. They're now, by the way, overgrown, so they've now got plant life on them and such like. And there's a flag stuck on the top now.
Yep.
And it's kind of cool. But yeah, so it just, the way Mark wrote that piece, that section of the story, it just had to be. It's such an iconic location of Cornwall, and we've actually put it on the front cover as well. So it's actually a main piece of art because of how iconic it really is, So, but yeah, that's kind of the story behind the you could either call it the Cornish Alp or the Cornish Pyramid, whichever you like.
The White Pyramid. So the other slight reference in there. Yeah, it's a bit of a spoiler because I'm telling you about, but it's not really for the theme of the story. It's just a little detail. It talks a little about Machu Picchu, and I don't know if everybody's familiar with that feature of Machu Picchu. That the pyramid in Machu Picchu has been placed in such a way that certain parts of the year, I think it's at the spring solstice or summer solstice. I invite the readers to maybe comment on that. You might know better than me. But there's a special feature with this pyramid at Machu Picchu where there's a winged serpent. No, sorry, feathered serpent. Kind of drag like a serpent seems to slither down the side of the pyramid because of the shadow, the way the shadows work, and it looks like it's moving. It's animated. Google it, or if you already know about that or you're familiar with it, tell us about it in the comments. I'll give you some reference to it. But that I just give a little mention to that into the story because it seemed to tie in a little bit with the kind of things that were to come, and the kind of general theme which we already have at that point by the time we get to that point in the story.
Excellent. Yeah, so the reason I bring it up is because, you don't always think of Cornwall for being famous for pyramids. But it turns out there are a couple of pyramids in Cornwall that you may or may not know of. And I wanted to show you a little slideshow here. So the one that we were first talking about is the China Clay Pyramid, which Gaz luckily gave us a fantastic, great big description about. It's located between Roche and St. Austell, not far from the Eden Project, if that means anything to anybody in the chat. The next one is the Killigrew Monument in Falmouth, which I've seen once, but I didn't really think of it much as like a pyramid, but technically it is pyramid in structure. Next up, we have the Nils Monument in St. Ives, which is quite a nice big one out in the open near the coastline. And then the last one that I'm aware of is the Porthcurno Pyramid, which is literally just like a little small pyramid in Porthcurno. It's just, again, on all these walking trails and paths and stuff like that. I was really surprised to find that there, if you Google Cornish pyramids, there's a few.
Well,
Yeah. Well, that's even more than I knew.
It's weird, right?
Just shows maybe the stories are real.
I've never knew about the last one.
Yeah. In Porthcurno, yeah.
Wow.
It's so wild. Wow. Oh, man. Okay, next question. Any other characters or locations based on the real world?
Well, yeah, interesting ones here. So we've already talked. You've already alluded to the one in the gallery. It is based on Gaz. As Gaz rightly pointed out, it was a sneaky one that I stuck in there. I kind of hinted that I was going to do a version of him, but yeah, it kind of snuck up on him when I sent him the segment, and then there was a little bit more with that character. And also, as I said, it was Andy. The original story was always going to be about Andy, our friend Andy, and so there is ease in this. He's not called Andy in the book, but he's very recognisable for those people that know Andy. But also, Gaz, with his artwork, did the same sort of thing to me with regard to sneaking one on me. He actually
revenge. It's called, people, revenge.
I think he did it first, but anyway, but I was massively complimented by it because what he decided to do with the artwork, he jumped ahead of just based on verbals that I'd given him on where the story was going to go. He jumped ahead and he placed. He took a picture of me, and they used the kind of caricatured it into like a cartoon shot, and then he developed a character all around it. So I'm not going to tell you what that character is, but there is a character that is based on me. Physically, facially, it's based on me.
You can't deny, right.
Yeah,
so
immediately. I immediately knew.
When you look at the comic strip, you probably will recognize it.
It's very obvious. Yeah. Visually.
Oh yeah, but that person has got a name that we stole from. We were visiting Cardiff. We went to a concert. Went to see what's his name, John Lydon, in Cardiff in concert with our friend Chris, and we got a little bit drunk as we sometimes do, and we came back. We went back to the service station. We were talking to somebody.
It was late. It was late. It was very late. So the only reason I'm interjecting is because Mark had quite a few. So I'm not convinced he remembers it completely exactly how it really happened. So it has to be explained perfectly well. Okay. So basically we got to this this service station, and it was very late, and this poor chap, this sole guy working on his own, mopping up behind the counter, and he saw us walk in, and his sort of head dropped, and he thought, oh no, I was going to lock up, and and we went, oh chap, any chance we can have can we have a drink? We would be so grateful. Oh please, all that. And he was like, oh, so he made us a drink, and so of course we asked him his name, and Mark, what was his name? The best name you have ever heard in your
Yeah.
entire life.
Yeah.
What was his
Well,
name?
just his first name. Well, his first name was Eli.
Eli.
And we went, oh, what a cool name.
That is a cool
cool
name, dude. Have you
And
got a surname to go with that, Eli? And he said,
Perkins. I mean,
Eli Perkins.
but no, I'm not drunk at this point in time, but that is such a cool name. And I said, right, but then and there, we both said that
straight away.
We're going to find somewhere in the story that's got to go in the story.
Yeah. Do you mind if we put you in a comic? Well, this poor chap's just stood there thinking, who are these crazy dudes? You know, I just want to go home. I've had a long day, and I've got these like three like lunatics, like, you know, banging on about putting me in a comic. But do you know what? He was such a good sport, and we actually took a photograph with him, and we did promise him that we would give him a nod. And so so Mark created this character around Eli Perkins. Bless him.
So, and I'm sure if Eli's watching this on YouTube one day, then nice one. We told him we'd do it, and we did do it. There is one of the person I can think of that's definitely based on, and didn't even change her name. So that's Ellie. Ellie's in the story as well. She's one of my friends here in Mevagissey, and she didn't even change her name. She's in doing the job that she does.
Well, Ellie Littlejohns, and she not only does she make us the best coffee in the morning, she's also an artist, and a very talented artist at that. And I do actually have some of her work in my gallery. So, you know, if anyone ever does visit the gallery site, you can look at her work on there. And yeah, very talented girl.
Which the link to the gallery is in the description of both of these live streams. Just to let you know, it's escape2.art. Just letting you know. He's also got an Instagram. There's a couple of choices down there, so don't worry. You got options. Fantastic. Yeah. I love that. I love that a lot. Okay, let's jump into to some more interesting topics as well. Let's talk inspiration. Dad, I'm going to start with you. What inspired you to write the story, and are there any other works that helped fuel that?
Yeah, and again, I was jumping ahead. We've got a tendency to do, even though we did prep or try to prep for this before. When the inspiration was, as I said, I just wanted to write. I was minded to write a story for my friend, and it had to be Lovecraftian because it was meant to appeal to something that he really liked, and it had to be a short story in that kind of genre. So that was the main inspiration initially. Then the whole thing with the octopus, all this, you know, which was going to be the theme of the story anyway, that some sort of a octopus type monster. That further inspired. But in terms of what was important to me, and it's going to be something that follows through in the future, I hope, is I wanted to make references to more than one author. So Lovecraft was the kind of style of the monster and the kind of general kind of theme of the story, very much the inspiration for it. But also, and as I've mentioned before, M.R. James, I really stole from him the idea of the name Krakmoth. But also there's bits and pieces in the story, and there's a couple that there's top of my head, I don't remember myself some of them, but I did. There's a part of the plot that I actually literally stole the chunk of the plot, the style of the plot, the theme from a story by Ray Bradbury called. I won't tell you what it is because it'll spoil. If you're familiar with Ray Bradbury, it'll already spoil it. But there's elements. There's also there even is, and if you look. I invite you to look for it. I've noticed when I was reading back on the story that I actually put a tiny little nod to the Wizard of Oz in there as well. But yeah, I've tried to put as many literary references in as I can, because I'd like to, you know, without bigging this up beyond the kind of initially silly little story it was meant to be. I thought we've made it into something much bigger. It showcases some like amazing art. Among other things, we've just made it a bit more interesting. We're building all this other social stuff around it, and thanks to Nathan, you know, kind of enabling all that for us. But we're making it a much bigger thing out of it. And so I think that if it does ever catch on, I'd like to think of it as a bit of a gateway to introduce people to these different styles, and maybe then go away and be inspired to go and read a bit of Lovecraft, or read a bit of Bradbury, or read a bit of M.R. James, that kind of thing.
Stuff. I like it. Good stuff. Gaz, your art style is very distinct and unique. I know I quite like it a lot myself, and I'm sure a lot of people do. How long have you been drawing, and have you always had a passion for art?
Whew. So a long time. So I've always been able to draw. You know, when I was young, a child, I was always, you know, that was just something that I naturally, you know, was able to do. And so the natural thing for me to do, you know, leave school. I went to art college and studied a foundation course in fine art and design, and then went to university and did and lasted a year, and then someone asked me to join a rock and roll band, so I went off and did rock and roll for a while, and then believe it or not, didn't really come back to art, as in you know, graphic art or drawing for something like 40 years. Um, and it was, you know, last year I had a bit of a health scare. All good now, thank goodness. And it was kind of my daughter really, who said, "Dad, look, you know, why don't you, you know, stop all this? I had a very physical job. I was always out and about, all weathers, and you know, and I'm not getting any younger." And my daughter said, "Dad, why don't you, you know, go back to your first love? You always said you wanted a studio and a gallery, and why not do it? Why not now?" So I kind of thought, well, okay, let's give it a go. No expectations, just see how it goes. But I realised all of a sudden I've got 40 years of all this stuff that just keeps coming out. Every time I put pen to paper, it just, this stuff comes out, and it's like there's loads of it, and I think there's enough in there to keep me going until I shuffle off. So yeah, so that's what I do. I sit and I doodle, and I listen. You know, art being subjective, and I'm a great believer in that. My stuff is not for everybody. You know, it's as simple as that. And once you understand that and you're comfortable with that, you know, and you find your niche, and you find the people that like you. It's the best job in the world, because there's no pressure. You know, you just sit and you doodle away, and I call it doodling because, like, quite literally, that's what it is. You know, but style wise, I mean, I prefer just, you know, monochrome. I like black and white. My early influences were Giger. People will know him for the guy that designed Alien. Now, I'm not professing to be as good as Giger. You know, he was an airbrush guy, whereas I'm an ink pen guy. But you know, the old comic style. I worked for 2000 AD as a line drawer in the 80s for a while. So, you know, that sort of old style fantasy sort of comic art is really where I'm at, you know. Saying that, you know, I could sit and I could draw you like a photograph. You know, I can life draw, but that's not where my passion is. You know, I find it quite boring. Take a photograph, you know, take a photograph, put a filter on it if you want to. Do you know what I mean? You know, it's a lot of effort for, you know, it's pointless really. So yeah, so fantasy art, I would say, more on the fantasy side. And yeah, probably graphic novel art is my sort of genre really. Yeah.
Nice. I feel like you almost answered my next question as well, but I'm still going to hit you with it in case there's more you can say. Are there any inspirations that help mold your style over the years?
For me, definitely, you know, your 2000 AD, you know, all those guys were just like up there. But Marvel, you know, all your Stanley Lee stuff, you know, yeah, comic art was my inspiration. You know, that's that was always, you know, I've never really grown up from that 11-year-old, 10-year-old boy who ran down to the shop, you know, every weekend with your pocket money, you know, and you bought your comic. It was the first thing you did, even above sweets, you know, candy as you call it in America. You know, it was the comic was always first. That was the thing, you know, and you run home and, you know, and off you went. So yeah, it's as well inspired by my landscape. You know, I live in probably, you know, the most coveted, beautiful part of the country. You know, everybody wants to live in Cornwall, and specifically, you know, the South Cornwall, South Coast, living in Mevagissey. You know, in the summer, you know, the place is rammed with tourists and holidaymakers, and every single one of them will say, "You're so lucky to live here." And do you know what? Yes, we are. We are. You know, so I have a studio in my gallery, but I also have a studio at home. And my window looks out, and I can see the sea, and I can see a working harbour, and that's my inspiration, really. You know,
That's beautiful. I think makes a lot of sense to me. Very inspirational. All right, so we're nearly done with my line of questioning. So on one of the pages, we see this, which says, "Coming soon, The Matador." Is this an actual story you're working on next? Is it tied into this one?
It is a story that I'm working on. Yeah, because it's not coming from a feed for some reason, Nathan. But that's what it looks like. It is a story that I'm working on now. This time, much like Krakmoth was inspired by my friend Andy, wanted to do something for him. The Matador was something inspired by Gaz, and I wanted to do something for him specifically. The Matador was a character, and I'll let Gaz talk about it in a minute. But as a character, he came up with when he was much younger, when he was back in his days when he was working 2000 AD and doing his own creative comics. But he talked about quite often, and I wanted to develop that into a story. I wasn't sure how until I was on holiday in Alicante recently to visit my brother. And Nathan, you were with me, and actually I was sat with you. We were it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea here, bullfight. For exploratory purposes, but I don't think that was the first time you'd been to a bullfight, and I was using what knowledge I had because I lived in Spain, was much younger, and I've been to one or two before, quite a bit back, and I'll kind of explain the ceremony, the whole sequence of events, and as I'm doing so, it occurred to me, I've just had the idea for the Matador. I know what it has to be about. I know it kind of hit in my head and thought, right, great. Now I can tell guys that is going to be the next story. And it's going to be based on your character, the Matador, even though I don't even know that character, but just a little bit of snippets that he's told me about. But yeah, I'm going to do that, but I know where that story's going. So the Matador, that is the next story. I'm currently working on it, and all the guys has had so far, as yourself, Nathan, I think I've sent you, is the first segment, the first little snippet. So I'm back in snippet mode. I apologise, guys. I know it's very frustrating. And I know that I'm going to try to do a little bit better job for guys so that after every couple of snippets, there's at least enough there to create a proper illustration. But to be fair, first piece of the story is based on work that Gaz has already done. So based on conversation we've had, Gaz has already made some fantastic artwork relevant to this story, completely relevant to this story. And so that initial bit is done. So that's on its way. Is it connected to Krakmoth? It's got common characters, let me put it like this way, including the bad guy from Krakmoth. without saying more than that. So yeah, it's in the same universe. It's in the same, in the alternative dimension universe. And yes, there is a bit of commonality, but it's not meant really as a sequel. In terms of time, eventually it should make sense that it's actually a prequel.
Yeah.
We'll have lots of references in it, literary references, but not now a whole load of different references. And to start with, for example, anyway, it's going to be one of the people, but the main structure of the story looks like Lovecraft was the main kind of reference for the Krakmoth. Hemingway's the main structure. Another major writer, I'll let you find out when you read the story. It's kind of feeding through that. It's based on one of his famous stories. So that's the Matador. Guys, I don't know if you want to talk about the Matador character a little bit that is based on, because I don't know anything about it. I've just done my rendition of what I think your Matador like.
I mean, so my idea, in the character for me, and it does go back quite. It's based on sort of ideas that I had like before years ago, and so it's like. But basically, we've been able to take a character from the Krakmoth, Lure the Krakmoth, and he's kind of a bit. He's not even a bit part guy in the Krakmoth. He's just very small, But there was something about him that he needed. He just needed more, investigation, really. So we've used him basically as an older. I don't think that's giving too much away, but he's an older version of the Matador. So the Matador is self-explanatory. He was a Matador in his younger life, and he basically has an epiphany, without giving it too much away. In my world, I'm not saying this is the way that Mark's it's gonna progress slightly differently, but he basically, was adored and spent his life being a matador. So, he was a hero to many. However, his guilt took hold, and his he realized what he was doing, was wrong, and he felt compassion all of a sudden for the beast, and so we've taken that initial idea and we've woven that into something that, I'm telling you, just the little bit that I know and have read, it's amazing. And as an artist, I just can't wait to get this stuff down on paper, because it's just opened up this whole new dimension of a traditional matador, but in our universe, it just lends itself to such an amazing hero. I can't wait. I really can't. I'm as excited about the Matador, if not more so, than what I was with the Lure of the Krakmoth. And that could be because I've had 6 months of the Krakmoth, so I'm done with the Krakmoth, if you get my meaning. I just want to move on. But yeah, I think it's safe to say that it's as equally as exciting and interesting and probably more dimensional. The Matador, there's a lot more going on there, and do you know what I love about it? It will investigate and kind of go into mental health, and there's a lot of topics been woven in there that I think are very current and should be spoken about, certainly in this like crazy modern world that we all like strive to live in. So we're trying to put elements of that in, or Mark is certainly in the story, and hopefully I will depict that. Well, I think I have. The actual piece of art that we just showed is
a piece of art,
is very when you decipher what this actually is, it's quite integral to what I'm saying there about mental health, and it's not just a piece of psychedelic kind of wacky art. There's this all means something,
which will become apparent in the story,
which will. So it it's all these kind of elements that have been woven in that have made it that much more exciting, and have got has really got certainly my creative juices going for sure, and very excited about it.
Fantastic. Well, conveniently you've answered my next question, which is and if so, will Gaz be the artist? I think we've already explained it now, so yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm afraid you're gonna have to put up with my nonsense for a bit longer, I think, until I'm sacked.
Inspired, it's very much inspired by Gaz's art.
Yeah.
As well as his character.
I think it's fantastic. I think it's really good. I know I'm personally looking really, really forward to getting a physical copy of Lure of the Krakmoth, and also reading more of the Matador story as it develops. And again, as a reminder to everybody out there, we've done a live Act 1 reading of Lure of the Krakmoth on this channel, but we're also going to be working on a full video / audiobook version, which is going to have voice acting. I'm probably going to have like a little bit of background music, maybe some sound effects and stuff. I'm going to try to do some animation things. I don't know how well that's going to go off, so we'll see what I can do. But yeah, that should be quite fun. I'm looking forward to doing that as well. So there will be many ways to digest it, however you see fit, which is nice. And I'm sure the Matador probably will have very similar in the future. Who knows?
Well, hopefully, yeah.
I think so. All right. Well, this is a perfect transition into going through some chat questions. So while I go through some of the chat and everything, if anybody still has other questions for either of these guys, or Lure of the Krakmoth, or maybe even Matador, they're probably not going to talk much about Matador, so good luck with that. But if you just want to ask them questions about anything, really, this is your time as we go through. Let's see. So Pike and Predator Angling 6908 asks, is the story suitable for all ages?
Absolutely. Yeah. 100%.
So.
And that was a conscious decision. We did have a albeit a very quick conversation about it. But yeah, we decided very early on that we wanted this. Harking back to that, I mentioned it a little bit when I spoke about my influences and being that 10-year-old boy who would every weekend run to with his pocket money to get that comic. I want, boys and girls. I want young people to try and get a bit of what we got when in our youth, when we didn't have Xbox and we didn't have PlayStation or any other. If you're allowed to, I don't suppose you're allowed to mention things like that. Are you?
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay, but you know what I'm trying to get at. That it was that old school entertainment kind of thing, and I don't think that's a bad thing, trying to bring an element of that back, and if kids can get that excitement about what happens next and can't wait till next week, it's such a great feeling, and yeah, so I think making it accessible to everybody was pretty important, really.
Yep.
I completely agree. I think that makes a lot of sense, especially the fact that, it's true. After reading the full story, because I wanted to be able to really talk a little bit about it, which has helped me form some of these questions and stuff. But again, I didn't want to be too spoilery with it. But I got to admit, there's a level of action. There's an awful amount of, there's this big amount of just this creepy atmosphere and awesome stuff that goes on. And it's really exciting. And I found it really good, but I wouldn't say there was anything in there that was like too problematic for people, even just under the age of a teenager. I probably wouldn't have like a 5-year-old read it, just because it might be a little complex.
But as someone's just pointed out to me, it is accessible and it is readable for children. However, you wouldn't sit down there with your 2-year-old or 3-year-old and it wouldn't be a bed night story.
Not
do you
quite,
know what I mean?
Not quite, yeah.
There's an element of sensibility that has to be involved. But all in all, it's a bit of fun. It's a bit of fun.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Like if a 12-year-old reads it, that's not that bad. But you're right. You wouldn't read it as a bedtime story. That's that might not quite work. It's especially because a lot of it is very in depth with the detail, and that then becomes maybe not the most interesting for really young kids to read. You know what I mean? Like their attention spans. Let's see. We're going to go through what looks like a statement here by Daniel Ritter. This is something I get all the time. I love the Weird Birds. Thank you very much, Daniel Ritter. But, I'm just the guy who makes the video for it. I'm not the creator. You need to go talk to Arcasukas. But thank you very much for the love either way. Let's see. A fun statement from Chaos, which was earlier, says, I'm sorry, this is so off topic, but I can't help but note how much Nate looks like his dad. That's, that's genetics at play, isn't it? Like, oh my goodness gracious. On topic, though, my mind is already blown at how clever the naming stuff has been. That's true. You guys really have you got a lot of thought going on in this process, and I think that's one of the more impressive sides of things. Because a lot of people reading it off the cuff who don't know perhaps any of these references, it might not hit them quite the same as those who can really connect the dots and be like, oh. But like you also mentioned, if people then end up doing a lot of research into some of the topics and ideas that are mentioned, they might then be like, oh wow, this is like deeper than I kind of expected. This is really interesting, actually.
And I think that would be an added bonus as well. If it did inspire people to investigate a little bit more about the landscape and the myth and the folklore of Cornwall, and I just think that's kind of cool. It's a bonus, that's good for Cornwall,
I completely agree. So it's just another fun little work that's coming out of a place that deserves all the love. It really does deserve it. Cornwall is a magical and mystical place. It's steeped in folklore and mythology and crazy legends, and it's also it's a gorgeous place. The people are incredible. We're not sponsored by by Cornwall Council, but just saying, like, if they wanted to maybe team up sometime, we could work something out.
Oh, absolutely. I do know a councillor locally. He might be on.
Who knows? In which case, make your presence known in the chat. Either one works. Either one, I could see both. So let's see. Then you guys are thanking. Chaos says, sounds striking. We had Floopy join. Hello, Floopy. Good to see you, my friend. Another regular of other live streams, occasionally when he can. Chaos also then says another statement. Even though I'm young enough to have been born the same year the NES came out, I remember that being kind of a thing even when I was young. I'll probably talk about like the excitement for comic books and candy and stuff. I can understand. I sadly didn't quite get that same kind of. My youth was not exactly the same because I'm clearly much younger, and the problem is it's not that I wasn't excited about comic books. It's just it's not like we could just run down to the store and always get a comic book, right? So we
No.
didn't quite have the same kind of experiences, but I can understand the excitement of a new release of something. You're like, oh yeah, I'm going to be able to read that today. It's going to be exciting. I can understand that completely.
Well, actually, Nathan, it was so back in our young days, and we won't even say when that was because without embarrassing ourselves. But comics, Marvel comics, American Marvel comics, especially with the color format, because there was an English kind of reprint series sequence like in the 70s, but which was also cool for those fans of Marvel like myself, but and Gaz. But it's the color Marvel comics. They came out kind of randomly. They weren't that frequent. You get maybe once every week or two. There'd be a new batch came into the local newsagent if you were lucky.
And it wasn't every newsagent.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was only certain ones, and it was
always a specific one, you know.
And Stuart, the comedian Stuart Lee, who I'm a massive fan of. I was listening to one of his, and unfortunately I couldn't even tell you. Oh, he did an interview recently. If you check out, just look for his interviews, and he was talking about exactly that experience. And he when he was a lad, the same sort of thing for him. He became passionately in love with Marvel comics, and he had the same experience for Saturday morning, going down and finding just like random, but brilliantly covered, brilliantly, really kind of grabbing your attention comics. But he has some of the background. He claims that in that interview, because I didn't know this, he said that the reason why that we all got random ones and we didn't get like series that they were used as packing for shipments coming from the States for other stuff that was being sent over.
Yeah.
The comic companies would sold them on any basis that they could possibly do that. So it makes out as though there was no distribution deal specific to sell the comics. They were just sent to the shippers and they use them for packaging, and that's why you got what you got.
I see.
So I think I don't know how much truth there is in that, but
I think there's an element of truth there. I do.
Yeah, I think there is.
Stories of
because they weren't as accessible as we'd like them to be. So you kind of got there's a bit of a random element into that.
They were never in sequence. So like issue 1, and then it'd be issue 5 the next week, and you'd be like, "Well, hold on a minute, what's going on here? That's a bit of a tangent." And then 4 months later, you'd get issue 2 and 3, and you'd be like, "Oh, right, okay."
But, and then here's a nod to in the book when you do get the book, and whoever reads the book and buys the book, you'll see that there's an ad page in there quite early on. This is Gaz's idea, good idea, I think, and these are real ads in the real world for real people. So please support those.
Check them out, yeah.
But what that reminds me, what that harks back to, what goes is again within Marvel comics. These American Marvel comics used to have all the ads, but the ads were all American. They're all things based in America. You could buy like seahorses. Yeah. You could send off monkeys. You could send off. We can do that. We got and the ads about the TV, all the brilliant Saturday TV lineup. And such brilliant TV. Now, that's where you've got the advantage, Nathan, because you did grow up with American Saturday morning TV, and I don't think it was anywhere near as good as the adverts in Marvel comics.
I know I did quite enjoy it was mostly like Saturday morning cartoons for me at the time in the States.
Yeah,
it's because for some reason they a lot of their like at least children / teenage based networks were more focused on animated things compared to live action, which is understandable, I suppose. If it's colorful and shiny, kids are going to watch it, right? And to be fair, I think another excellent point about it is that they used to show things like X-Men. They used to show things like not so much like a DC. Eventually, there was there was a lot of Batman stuff. There was always some kind of Batman thing. Not always a lot of Superman, which I found that to be quite interesting. But inevitably, later on in the years, they did end up making like Justice League. So they did end up going into really comic heavy territory. But then they also sold out to other places as well, including like Japan and China. So we would also get like these other. It was mainly like Pokemon and things like that. Just things that were abroad that, we even in America, they were like, we don't usually get this kind of stuff here, but now it became a regular thing and you could buy the merchandise and everything. So it was very interesting to kind of, I would say it was a big influence on my upbringing, just being excited to be like, oh, Saturday morning cartoons is usually new episodes of something. There was easily like anywhere from 5 to 10 things that you really wanted to watch. But the problem was, especially before we had like TiVo or DVR, you had to pick what you were going to watch, and then you had to hope you would find a rerun of it later on if you wanted to watch something else, which it never
Yeah.
always lined up. So you were like, well, it's what are you going to do, you know? So it's
Well,
not quite the comic experience, but you know, I definitely say I feel the level of nostalgia there for sure.
Yeah. Well, you were definitely lucky compared to, let's say, 70s England or 80s England, because we had 3 channels. And certainly in 70s England, we had 3 channels, and one of them was BBC Two, which wasn't even on that time of day. So a Saturday morning, you get ITV serves something up and BBC serves something up. And this is even before they had something like the Swap Shop and the Tiz Wars, you might have heard. It's a long time back. There was half decent entertainment. But when you're looking at reading these adverts for them, and they've got, first of all, the superheroes, they've got their own series, the cartoon series. What you can watch Spider-Man, what on telly? We didn't have it. We know so, but not just that, but just cool stuff. There was a lot of sci-fi type drama on and things like that. Why don't we have that in England? And it's very, very annoying. Anyway, sorry, I digress.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I think it's great because I mean that's the beauty of this kind of a format. We do what we want, really. Let's see. Chaos says that actually sounds like my more recent experience trying for the newer ElfQuest run, OMG Wild, which my dad then responded, ElfQuest, he's a big fan. We also then have Chaos saying, I have the entire Marvel run and the following series and a few scattered side series issues. Another ElfQuest fan in the
not
wild.
the entire run, but I've got a lot of the initial sequence of the Marvel ElfQuest as well, so we'll have to compare notes on that one.
Oh, that's incredible. Marvel ElfQuest. I didn't know that. I didn't know Marvel did ElfQuest. I only know very little.
No, it's not. No, I don't think it's Marvel. Do ElfQuest, is it?
I've got it. I'm going to have to go down my box and have it dig it out. But I've got maybe it's DC then, but it's American format.
Right.
Yeah. Because I definitely recognize ElfQuest, but I didn't. Weirdly, we didn't get a lot of exposure to that in my youth and teenage years. There wasn't really a lot of that on the TV anyway. I suppose that was mostly my upbringing. Was a fair amount of television and school books and you know, it was a mixture of things. But I guess that's just the evolution of technology, isn't it? Like, you know, things happen over time, and that was just what we had. It was very different.
I'm unfortunately going to have to make my excuses and split very soon because
that's okay.
I've got a wife here who I haven't seen for some time, and she's just got back today, and I'm being told quietly that I've got to go and have dinner.
That's
so. I don't know how far off we were of wrapping up.
Yeah, but, we've gone through the chat, so we can we could definitely do our last minute segment thing where we advertise anything, and then we can wrap up.
Okay, well, I think one important thing, just to let everyone know, is the physical copy, the print of the Lure of the Krakmoth, should be finalised, believe it or not, tomorrow. Now we've had to resource our printers because we had lots of problems with the company we were using, who really frustratingly kept mixing up the pages, and it just got really tiresome, and just in the end we just pulled it, and so we're going with a local company now that have assured me that they can do a turnaround within less than 2 weeks. So we will definitely be sat here next time, hopefully holding up a hard copy of the beauty, so that will be, so all that information will now go on to the Escape Gallery website. So everything will be on there, the links and how to purchase, and we'll sign them, myself and Mark anyway. And you'll get a print in the new, this first edition. We're going to go all out, and I'll put you a nice sneaky little print in there that you can frame or do what you like to. But yeah, so we'll make it an interesting, well worth package. And one other important thing I want to just put out there: so the first edition, in the true sense of the term, the first edition, there will be mistakes in there in the text. The typing. I was getting like nodding off as I was typing sometimes, and there will be the odd grammatical mistake. Now, firstly, I do apologise for that. However, if you look at that as an added bonus, because it is a first edition, these potentially could be quite sought after. in the future, because I can guarantee you the second print editions will all be proof read again, and any minor faults will be corrected, for the second edition. But please bear with us, and it's up to you. If you can be critical, or you can just take it as actually a little bit of a bit of reality. We've put this together. It's the first time we've done this. We've it's been, we're not professing to be these mass professionals, and or whatever. This is just a labour of love that we've put together, and warts and all, blood, sweat and tears and all that, but just take it for what it is, and enjoy it, and with the added bonus that it will obviously make it quite quite a special edition, if you know what I mean.
Quite right. Well, fantastic. This has been a lovely little live Q&A with the creators of Lure of the Krakmoth, my father and Gary included. We really hope you've enjoyed yourselves, and we really hope we've answered quite a number of your questions. And as Gaz also mentioned, that if you go through the Escape Gallery website, which is in the link, is a link in the description below, which is escape2.art, you'll end up being able to buy the physical copy when it releases. And if you're one of the first ones, you get part of the exclusive first batch run. That sounds pretty good to me. Thank you both very much for joining us. I'm really glad we got to do this. And thank you yet again, audience, for joining us as well. These streams will be available as VODs afterwards, of course. And we thank you so much for your time, and we hope you enjoyed the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you, Nate. Thank you everybody who's tuned in. And
thank you.
It's been great. And hopefully we'll do it again. Check us out. Keep up to date with what we're doing.
I'm right.
Thank you, guys. Take care. Take care.
Cheers, guys.